Welcome everybody, if you're viewing with us today. We're just waiting for one of our co-hosts to join us on our page, and we're basically talking about what is verbal abuse. What is verbal abuse? That's what we're talking about today. What is verbal abuse? Janice, if you've managed to log in, just give me a thumbs up and then I'll try and add you. If you see the little button that has got a small person and a little picture person on the side and it says add, just accept that addition. You don't see it? Oh. I think it's to do with your settings on the Facebook, because you should be able to log in. I can see other people. I don't know why I can't see you. Have you sent a request so that I can add you? Okay, let's do it that way. Send a request on the I see you page when you're logged in. Send a request and I'll try and add you that way. Let me know if you've done it. Technology is one thing. Yes, so we are still here live waiting for one of our colleagues, Janice Cummings, who's in California. Technology can be a bit taxing, and I'm just hi Max, I can see you all the way from, is it Texas? Yes, so we are talking about what is verbal abuse. What is verbal abuse? I'll start in the meantime while we wait for Janice to let me know if she's managed to log on or not. Verbal abuse is quite, in fact any abuse is really quite challenging, to be honest. And today the Magdalena Foundation really represents and stands for victims of domestic violence and abuse. And just to give you a little background as to why we are doing this show or this platform, is really basically to raise awareness. And so we're just raising awareness on what is verbal abuse. I have taken the time to, write down and find out what is verbal abuse, what are the red flags, what do you do about it. And I want to give a little background about the Magdalena Foundation before I start. It was founded in 2015, and it was off the back of really what happened to my mother, and also what happened to me, and the various issues that were going around, in relation to domestic abuse and how high the cases were. And so that really became my passion, and I took it from there. So basically here today we are talking about what is verbal abuse and what are the red flags. So I'm going to say a little bit about it, and then also invite any questions. I'm still kind of waiting for one of our guests from California, Janice Cummings. She's the CEO of UWIN, working with me. So I'm hoping that she'd be able to join us live on this platform. Also, I hope that this technology is not something that will end up being a difficult thing. So anywho, Let me try again. No, not yet ready. Okay, so verbal abuse is one of the least forms of abuse spoken about. It is the use of tactics, various tactics that affect people in their day-to-day lives. And sometimes you don't even notice that you're being verbally abused. Sometimes you kind of just, you know, accept it, and sometimes, you know, if you're not really paying attention, it can easily pass you by. And most people grow up in that kind of environment, and they never know it until they're, you know, fully grown. And this is basically from childhood, and sometimes even as an adult, when you're in it, you don't really realize it because you can easily be groomed and you don't notice that you're being verbally abused. So if you're on here today, please share our live. Share our live. We're talking about what are the forms of verbal abuse. We're talking about also the red flags, and basically Janice was going to talk about that, so hopefully she'll be able to join us at some point. Let me just check if she's ready. No, not yet. Okay, so anyway, one of the forms of verbal abuse is something like yelling. So in this case, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter how you behave, if you're living with such a person who's so narcissistic and who just thinks of themselves, and, you know, just basically they are important, no matter what you do or say, you're yelled at all the time, and you can't, there's no pleasing the perpetrator at all, whatever you do. Another one is reversing responsibility. Now that one, I never really knew that was another form of verbal abuse. I wasn't aware of it until I sort of started experiencing it, and until I got educated on it. So in this case, what that means is the perpetrator will say to you things like, "You make me yell at you," or for example, "If you lost weight, I wouldn't call you fat," that kind of thing. In other words, putting the blame on you, and yet all the while really it is not your fault. So it's like kind of like reverse psychology, trying to blame you for things that you haven't done, trying to make you feel bad, like putting all the onus on you. So that's one of the forms of verbal abuse. Another one is degrading or insulting remarks, and they can be indirect ones. So if you don't pay attention to what the perpetrator is saying, you might think that, oh, he's being really caring, or she's being really caring. Or it can, you know, this verbal abuse can come from all corners: your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your work colleague. In my case, an example was many years ago. I was dating someone, and we were getting ready, we were planning our future, etc., and we were getting ready to move to another country. And then what he said to me was, "Oh, so what are we going to do about our weight?" Now bear in mind, guys, bearing in mind that I was the only big girl or the only big one in the relationship, right? I was the only big one in the relationship, and he wasn't. He was this slim person. And what did that mean? Obviously that meant that he was insulting me. He was abusing me, saying that I was the big one, you know. And it's not as if he didn't know that I was big. You know, when we met, I was a big girl. I wasn't a tiny person. So that kind of reverse psychology, degrading or insulting remarks, is very, very bad, and it kind of sticks in your mind for a very long time. People think that verbal abuse is like scarring you or beating you or doing, you know, physical battery. No, that's not the only form of abuse. Verbal abuse is one of them. And that one is the most damaging one by far, more than beating, more than being physically abused, that one is the most damaging one, because it's all mental. It affects you mentally, and when it affects you mentally, you go through that journey of life, self-blaming, self-degrading, self-loathing, self-hating. You end up having all these emotions about yourself and not loving yourself, and always second guessing yourself, always judging yourself, always doubting yourself, because someone has spoken into your life and spoken to you and told you who you are, what you cannot do, what you can't do, where you can go, where you cannot go, who you're going to be, how to dress, etc. So they're really just having power and control over your life, and then control 100% over your mind. So whatever he says, according to you, his opinion matters. So that becomes a really challenging thing to do. Let me see if we can get hold of our guest. Janice, right, we're still waiting for you. Let me see if you're there. Have you managed? I think, Janice, you might have to ask somebody to help you if they're close by, just to show you how to join the live, because I've tried to look for your invitation, but I've not been successful. Anywho, so while we still wait for Janice to join us, if you just find somebody who can help you, then, you know, just let me know in the comment section that you've managed to get through. So moving on, the other signs of verbal abuse are things like using hostile words, and these ones make you feel guilty. They're spoken to you in a very aggressive way, in a very angry and unfriendly manner. So for example, somebody will speak to you and say to you, "You're not worth it, you're a bunch of useless person, you're disgusting, or you're filthy." I mean, those things start making you judge yourself. You start self-critiquing yourself, you start self-loathing, and you know, he'll say things like, "If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be here," or if we end this relationship, nobody's going to want you. You know, really degrading remarks. That's one of the most painful things, and you end up doubting yourself. You end up thinking, well, is it worth it? Will I be worth it if I go out there? Will somebody be attracted to me if I go out there? And you end up staying in that relationship when really perpetrator has never been worth it. It's not worth staying in that relationship where you are abused mentally and you end up self-loathing yourself, or even to the point of self-harming. Also, one of the other forms of verbal abuse is trying to control you using threats. I'm sure many of you have noticed, like for example, if he can use threats, like if you're in a family and you have children, he'll say, "If you leave me, I'm going to take the children, you'll never have the children." You know, so that's already abusing you, verbally abusing you. "If you leave me today, I am not going to give you those children. You will not see those children. If you leave me today, you will never ever come back into this house again. If you leave me today, you will never get any of my money." So already threatening you, using threatening words. "If you leave me today, I'll kill myself. If you leave me today, I'll kill you." You know, using threatening words, stopping you from leaving and stopping you from being free. So all of us, I want to agree, is that we've all faced some sort of verbal abuse in our lives, and many of us in fact are facing it right now. We face it every day, and sometimes we don't even notice it, and in most cases we don't even realize that we're being accused. We don't even accept that we're being accused. We just think that this person is being, you know, always being caring or being kind or being understanding, so we don't even accept the fact that they're being abusive. One of the other things is with verbal abuse, you always, as the victim, you always have to think before you say, because you don't know how the perpetrator is going to react. You don't know how they're going to act. You don't know how they're going to behave. And in most cases, the perpetrator is always, you know, on edge, in an angering mood. So for example, you might come into the room and say something, and it will just explode. So you're always kind of careful. You're too afraid to say anything in case it infuriates the perpetrator. So you're always second guessing yourself. You're always doubting yourself, and you're weary about what you're going to say. I mean, what kind of life is that? Are you prepared to live that way? It's something to think about, you know. You always have to walk on eggshells. You always have to make sure and think and overthink. If I say this, what will he say? What will his reaction be? Will it result in being abused or beaten or verbally abused, or being shouted at, being yelled at, being told you're not worth it, being told you're a piece of rubbish? Is it worth it? Can I find something that will not affect him? Can I find something that will not, you know, be a trigger, that will not cause a terrible atmosphere in the room today? So that becomes a really concerning issue. So what are the forms of verbal abuse? What are the forms? Before we go ahead with that, let me just see if Janice has made a comeback. No, Janice. Oh, I'm still trying. I won't give up. But it looks like you haven't made it. Let me know if you've managed to find somebody who can help with the technology on your end. So anywho, let me see if I can write. Right, okay. Let me know if you've managed. So what are the forms of verbal abuse? Taunting is one of them. Abusive jokes like, look at your hair, it looks like it's been through, you know, the fire, or it looks all spiky. Oh, I was only joking, your hair looks nice, never mind, don't pay attention, I'm only joking. That kind of thing, that's really abusive. Already the person, once you say that to them, they become really conscious of their looks. They become conscious, and they're always trying to make sure they look all right. So they're already self-doubting themselves. They already doubt themselves that, okay, my goodness, my hair must look awful. And he might say, are you really going to wear that skirt? Yeah, it looks all right, but if it was a bit longer, that kind of thing, you know, already degrading you, already saying something that's abusive, making you doubt the way you're dressed, making you feel unsure of how you're dressed. Another one is making sexist comments like, woo-wee, you look like I could eat you up, kind of thing. You know, there's no need to say things like that, sexist comments like that. Or even making threats, like I was explaining before. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. If you do this, I'll kill myself. If you do that, you'll never see your children. If you do this, you'll never see a dime of my money. You know, those kind of things. The other things are humiliating you in private and in public. That is very, very, very painful and very concerning that somebody would do that to you. So humiliating you in public, like for example, you're there walking together, and then the perpetrator says, look at you, you look disgusting. I should never have brought you out. I think you should go back home, get out of my sight. You look disgusting. You know, that kind of humiliation in public. Instead, when he should have said something before you left home, you should have said, babe, you know, I think you would look better in that. You know, say it in a very lovingly encouraging way, but instead he'd rather choose to insult you in public and embarrass you in public, which is the worst thing anyone would ever do. Another name calling, Name calling is one of the worst things. Calling you fat, calling you stupid, calling you worthless, calling you useless, all those kind of things are the worst things to be called. You start doubting yourself again. You start thinking and believing that that's what you are, worthless. That's what you are, useless. That's what you are, pointless. That's what you are, rough, or whatever the case may be. You start believing whatever the perpetrator is saying because he says it several times a day to you, and yet that's not who you are. You're not worthless. You're not useless. You're not unworthy. And you know, those kind of comments are really bad. Criticizing is another one as well, and belittling you, telling you that, you know, if it wasn't for me, you'd be nothing. If it wasn't for me, you'd be no one. If it wasn't for me, nobody would notice you. Those kind of belittling comments, making you feel like you're really rubbish and worthless. Another one is blaming. Oh, that's the worst one. I remember some time ago when I was in a relationship, I always like to give an example so that, you know, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. When I was in a relationship many years ago, and I went out of my way to you know, do something really nice for the person I was dating, and then we met somewhere, and then he said to me, oh, you know, if it wasn't for you right now, I'd be somewhere else. You're boring me, you know. And that was so hurtful, to be blamed for something that you know, wasn't even my fault. I was there on time. He was delayed somewhere, and he was trying to put the blame on me, to say that if it wasn't for you, who I had to meet right here today, I wouldn't have been delayed. Delayed for what? We were meeting, you know. So that was really, really painful. Being blamed for things that you haven't even done, that have got nothing to do with you. So those are one of the things, or some of the things, that you need to be watchful for. Being accused, or even being judged. Judging is also one of those awful things that one would experience. You don't want to be judged. You don't want to be put in a position where everything that you do, he's judging you. Everything that you say, he's judging you. Wherever you're going, he's judging you. Whatever you're doing, he's judging you. Belittling you, telling you you're nothing, telling you you're worthless, shouting at you, yelling at you, threatening you. I mean, that will just make you go insane. That will just make you get all confused. That will just make you lose your self-control, lose faith in yourself, lose self-confidence. I worked with women in the past where they got to that stage because they had been living this life for so long, where they were being abused all this time. They could hardly make simple decisions as to what lipstick can I wear, how can I do my hairstyle, what kind of clothes can I wear. They were being belittled all the time. They were being subjected to verbal abuse all the time. One fact that people don't realize is that it is shockingly common in families. Families are one of the places or arenas where verbal abuse is high. And mind you, verbal abuse can happen even anywhere. It can happen outside the home. So it could be at work, from a work colleague. It could be a teacher, even at uni or at school. Verbal abuse could be anywhere, and even a stranger on the train or on the bus. Verbal abuse can happen, and it does not need to happen to anyone. There is no need of verbal abuse. People should be able to speak to one another without abusing one another. So I think I've spoken for almost about 20 minutes without having our main guest. I don't know where she's gone to. Janice, well, it's okay, but if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section, because Janice was mainly the person I really wanted, where she was going to talk about the red flags that you need to be sort of being aware of. What sort of red flags can form up? I mean, like for example, the things that I've given you, just to name, these were just to name a few of what they are. Those are some of the red flags. So if you're in a relationship and somebody starts belittling you, starts yelling at you for no reason, or if you find that yourself feeling doubtful and unsure of yourself, and if you find that you are losing your confidence, or you have no more confidence in what what you think or how you feel or what you want to say, then it's time to check yourself to find out, well, am I being verbally abused? Janice, I can see you online, but I don't understand why I cannot invite you. I am trying. You obviously probably need some help with logging on, but we'll try and review it again. So anyway, what I was saying was that if you are in that kind of relationship, it is worth checking for red flags. Is he yelling at you? Is he or she saying degrading remarks? Are they judging you? Are they belittling you? Are they telling you that you're worthless? Are you always feeling like you're walking on eggshells? Like if you say just one little thing, it'll just explode. The atmosphere will change. People will become angry and upset. There'll be fights. Just look around and observe what kind of relationship you're in. And we talk about verbal abuse right at the beginning of the relationship, before you even get into a permanent relationship. And that's why we titled this session, Do You Really Know Who You Are Dating? So it's important to see those red flags. Look out for those red flags if you're in a relationship and it hasn't gone far enough yet. You haven't moved in yet, you haven't gotten married yet, because all these things start showing up right at the beginning of the relationship, and even right up until into the engagement, when you're all feeling comfortable with one another, you begin to start seeing the signs. I know that yes, in the beginning of the relationship, people always like to put their best foot forward. They really do, most of the time. But for how long can anyone last, putting their best foot forward? I can give you an example. You might think that, my partner is being very loving, very kind. They're asking me where I am. I should take a picture and send them a picture of where I am, or I should take a picture and send him a picture of what I'm doing, or a video call, or who I'm with, or things like that. Those kind of red flags are important to take note of. And so the important thing is also to note how he's speaking to you. Note how he's speaking to other female colleagues, to female members of his family. Note how he's speaking to them. Note how she is speaking to the male members of her family, her male colleagues, her male friends. This is not just verbal abuse for females only, it's verbal abuse for everyone. So it's kind of important to make sure that you are taking note across the board. Verbal abuse happens even to children, and sometimes it can even be worse in the family setting, where the parent is grooming the child to be verbally abusive towards the other parent. So in other words, playing one against the other, and it becomes very traumatic and tormenting for the victim who's going through it. So we had a reading material that was really useful for you to read. So Janice, if you're able to type in the comment section while people are viewing, so that they'll be able to see what kind of reading material that you had already collected for people to have a look at, or to read, or even to listen to. That would be perfect. I know with this live we'll kind of find out how we're going to work it out and do another one next week. Hopefully she'll be able to join us then. But in the meantime, what is important is to stay safe. I know during this lockdown it has even made it worse for victims of domestic abuse, domestic violence. They're in lockdown with the perpetrators. They don't know how to find help or be set free. And we've been hearing through the news how people, victims have passed away. In the first week of lockdown, there were about 27 victims that died during lockdown due to domestic violence, and sadly they lost their lives. So this is very important. That's why we're talking about verbal abuse, because that's right at the beginning of the relationship. Because once you're in the relationship, it becomes very difficult to come out of it. Once you're in an abusive relationship, it makes it really, really hard to come out of it. Makes it hard to let go, because the abuser or the perpetrator loves to exercise power and control. And so once he has a hold of you, it's difficult to come out of it. And as the victim, you may want to come out of it. You may want to work on how you can possibly come out of it. But you will obviously need help in coming out of it. You would need professional support, family support, to come out of such an abusive relationship. And that's why we're talking about the red flags today. Before you get into such a relationship, you might as well walk away right at the beginning of the relationship, before it gets to a regrettable moment where one could easily lose their life. So at this point, I think we will wrap up. I think we've been talking for almost about 20 minutes. My time is now saying 20 past 9. I guess we've been on it for a longer period than what we really wanted. But I want to say to you that in this period of lockdown, please, whatever you do, stay safe. Here in the UK, we've got numbers that you can ring. We've got the Women's Aid and Refuge, and their number is 0808 2000 24/7, 0808 2000 24/7. And if you're viewing from another country, you would have to find the crisis numbers. They are available in the public domain, which is the internet. You should be able to find that. And if you are in a situation where you are in an abusive relationship and you're not able to go on the internet, if you have a trusted friend or trusted family member or someone who you trust, ask them to help you by finding information or contact details. Ask them to help you with that. Let me see if Janice, you've managed. No, okay. So I think we'll wrap up at this point. If you have any questions, you can always inbox us. We'll be happy to help you and signpost you, because our motto here on the Magdalena Foundation is for every victim to become a survivor. So every victim, till every victim becomes a survivor, till every victim becomes a survivor. So that is our motto. We desire for everyone who's in an abusive relationship to become a survivor, to be set free. And if you're at the beginning of the relationship, watch out for the red flags. Walk away as quickly as possible if you see anything that's familiar based on what I have said today. So I think I've spoken enough. So this is just a little snippet of what's coming. Next week we'll be live again, and I think we'll be continuing the topic of what is verbal abuse. We'll be continuing because there's many avenues and many areas that we'll be exploring in relation to that. But in the meantime, I just want to say, take care, be safe. If you're in trouble and you think your life is in danger, please dial 999. Do not waste time at all. Ring the emergency crisis number for the police. Ring the emergency crisis number for the domestic violence and abuse centers that are in your area or in your country where you are. But in the meantime, my name is Pamela Dunduru. I am the founder and CEO of the Magdalena Foundation. I will speak a little bit more about my experience next week, and hopefully our guest Janice Cummings will be live with us next week. But in the meantime, you take care and stay safe. Stay safe. Okay then, bye bye.